How are you?
I'm okay. I'm good. Can't complain, man. It's been a testing time, to say the least.
Yes.
These COVID environs are not for the faint-hearted.
Yes.
But I think it's been an interesting one and a challenging one. And I think we enjoy a challenge. Me personally. I've had to have seen this like a challenge, and I've had to kind of cultivate a positive mind frame, to make it through everything that's happened. So I'm okay. Let me say that I'm okay for now. Yes.
Yes. Welcome to the CEO Bench. My name is Navio on this fourth edition. Actually, not fourth edition. It is the fourth episode, right? Yes. Welcome to the CEO Bench. My name is Navio, and without any further ado, it says if a man needs too long introduction, he doesn't deserve one. And he who has the opportunity to introduce himself with so much doesn't require one. Ladies and gentlemen, all across the world, live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube, in the studio is the newest CEO, the one and only Daniel Lugwama Chigozi, aka Navio, actually known to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We're not allowed to shake hands.
Yes. A sanitized bonga will suffice.
Yes. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm good. Can't complain, man. It's been a testing time, to say the least.
Yes.
These COVID environs are not for the faint-hearted.
Yes.
But I think it's been an interesting one and a challenging one. And I think we enjoy a challenge. Me personally. I've had to have seen this like a challenge, and I've had to kind of cultivate a positive mind frame, to make it through everything that's happened. So I'm okay. Let me say that I'm okay for now. Yes.
Yes. Well, welcome to the CEO Bench.
Thank you.
The CEO Bench often bring people like you to the bench. And the reason for the CEO Bench is to discuss leadership, change management, and of course transformation of human beings, foray into the people that we become today, that change society. And you are of course the newest CEO, I would say, from the top.
Yes.
And we thought about you. We often look for the CEOs. We ask people to vote and say, who do you want us to bring on the CEO Bench?
Yes.
And this week you actually won the vote.
Thank you. My fair people of Uganda.
Yes.
And the world, actually.
So you are talking to over 1.8 million people in Uganda.
Yes, absolutely.
And about 15,000 people on Facebook that are looking forward to this interview.
Nice.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Etienini,
Etiabe,
Jebale, Ariamabe, all of them. Yes.
So Danny, let's start from this. This is actually Navio. Navio is known to you as Daniel Lugwama Chigozi is the real name.
Yes.
But he's actually known to you as Navio. And he's a musician. He's the CEO of NavCop. And we're here to talk about Navio as the CEO and We're looking at the leadership abilities that determine the level of effectiveness of a leader.
Yes.
And we're looking at the success stories of NavCop.
Yes, yes.
You have built NavCop from scratch to where it is today.
Yes.
And we want to know what have you been through, what processes you've gone through, what you've done. But to start with first, we'll like to throw you to the deep end. Who is Daniel Lubwama Chigozie in a nutshell? Yeah,
Daniel Lubwama Chigozie, I think, is I won't say competitive individual, but I'd say one that it has been shaped by upbringing, has been shaped by a lot of other factors in my life have shaped my trajectory. So if you talk about business, the fact that I played sports, the fact that, you know, I was very in tune with what my family were doing, and they were older than me as far as business is concerned. I think all of these factors kind of chipped in and helped to shape the person that I am now. So I can say I'm a person who, I think my brother is the first person I ever heard say work hard, play hard. You know, when it's a play hard scenario, you know, that is what will happen. When it's a work hard scenario, I expect people to switch those caps with me, you know, so I've always seen myself as kind of a train, you know, and I'm on that train. I'm heading in a certain direction. It's incredibly hard to stop a train, and I hope people jump on with me to see that common vision. I think that's kind of, in a nutshell, you know, who I am. I like to kind of work hard, push my abilities. I don't have to be number one, but I do like to compete using my full experience and my full wealth of knowledge and my full physicality to kind of complete any task which I get into.
If you had to rewind the clock back to, let's say, a certain age when you were still young, back to the days of clear cuts, which age would you be, and why would it be your very favorite age?
I think age 14, turning 15.
Why 14, 15?
We're being put on a plane as 14-year-old, 15-year-olds, sitting first class next to the Oliver Mutukutsis of this world and the, you know, Papa Wembas of this world, being flown, you know, to South Africa for the Cora Awards. So you can imagine this is like otherworldly for us, you know. One day you're, you know, catching a border, you know, to an underground battle in DV8, and then off your second song, you know, pretty much you're being flown out, you know, and we are nominated for Most Promising and Revelation of the Year. So that was a beautiful experience, and I think those experiences were me still just as an artist. The business of music hadn't yet come in. The challenges, the supply and demand, the building a brand, none of those factors had yet come in. So it was me literally just as an artist on a plane, you know, just enjoying myself, you know, with all my boys.
And feeling good. So those moments when you look back down the road to that moment when you guys were going for Cora Awards and you were nominated, what was running into your mind, particularly you? And of course, we can't talk for many other people, but I'm sure you shared the group. You, Papito, The Myth, Tom, JB, and then Langman. What was going in your mind?
I thought, you know, this is going to be a really cool story. And because, of course, I started in a group basically kind of as like a hype man, you know, I was like, wow, you know, we've done something really cool. Anyway, back to school, you know, we'll have this story to tell people. I had no idea that I'd be sitting here, you know, 59 awards later, having toured over 30 countries. It must be close to 60 cities for music, having had accolades, having performed for my king several times, you know, whether it's, you know, his 60th or, you know, there's a lot of small things that have happened that I could have never imagined, and things I would have seen and countries I've been to. All because of that moment, you know, music and how it began. And then, of course, you know, now changing me into the businessman that I am now, I had no idea that it could start from something like music. You know.
So at 14, on the flight going to South Africa, And did you ever see yourself becoming a CEO of your own corporation?
Definitely not. Yeah, that I didn't even know what the CEO. I'm sure I was calling it OEC by then, or EOC or something. I thought it was the East African Commission or offices or something. I had no idea that the business role would take on a life of its own. So I always had music at the back of my head, even in school. And because of that, I knew that I was dealing with a dynamic, ever-changing, and in Uganda, a non-existent industry. Just as far as music was concerned, people were releasing music, but in terms of like hip-hop and people breaking the mold by then, it wasn't really done consistently. You had very talented individuals who put their best foot forward and inspired us, but in terms of consistent work, you know, I'm like, what are the frameworks that make this work? So I felt myself coming back holiday after holiday, learning a bit more about music, then going back to school, and I'd add a module of business, or I'd add a module of psychology, or I'd add a module of political science. And all of these things were kind of feeding back into the roles that I wanted to do. I thought I would be in the line of UN work, you know, aid work. That was really my focus. I thought I'd move into that international relations space. Because I've always wanted to change lives and do something positive. But I knew that there's a lot of similarities between that world and
this world.
The music business.
There are two worlds.
Yes. Especially if you're treating it as a business. You know, you will be on camera and you will be addressing people and you will be a role model of sorts. And I knew that there were a lot of similarities between the two, so I kind of prepared myself for such.
Wow. Well, if you're joining us from all across the world, we are talking to Daniel Lugwama-Chigozi, aka Navio, who is the CEO of NavCop. NavCop is a company founded and owned by Navio as a musician. And I think he has already given you some really great insights on how it started and how it started, where it is, and where it's going is where we're going now. And so please tap your neighbor, tap your cousin, tap your sister, grandma, grandpa, everyone down, and tell them there is a CEO called Navio on television. Navio, we're going to talk about something very interesting. Change management. What is your idea of being a leader now that you're a CEO? First of all, how did you become a CEO of your company?
I think for me it was born out of necessity. You know, there's only so long you can stuff money under your mattress. There's only so long you can stuff money in your kabada and your shoe boxes, and eventually, if you're growing at the rate which we were growing, then you have to make allowances to expand and do them in the right way and a safe way. So it came out of necessity. First of all, setting up the company, you're doing tours all across the world. You know, a personal account is great, but how these things are taxed becomes important for your business later on. As soon as you cross that threshold of 50 million a year, you know, you're now in
the interest become share.
Yes, they'll be like, can I see your documentation? So as soon as you cross that threshold, you know, you can't just be trying to balance things from your own account and such. So it really came out of necessity. The industry and my personal career had moved to a point where I had to be doing business professionally. You know, you cannot just be directing 20-30 ma into your personal account and you know, not really keeping track of what's going on. And two, setting up a framework, I think, protects you at the end of the day. You have all your books and you've ticked all your boxes. There are a lot of people running around who do promotions companies, but you're actually supposed to get a live show component to your company. That has to be written in your memorandums, all that stuff, you know. So there are a lot of people who can get shut down at a moment's notice. People can walk in and be like, do you have permission to do this live show? You know, do you have permission to be on stage? Whose songs are you singing? You know, your copyright and such. So it was really about necessity for me. And of course, the role of CEO, it's not one that I thought I could take on at the same time as being an artist.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense because you have the legwork that a lot of the management does, and you see the world. You have that inside view of the world of music yourself, and a lot of people want to meet you. A lot of businesses, you attract people and attract clientele, sometimes using your marketing, and unfortunately the marketing is tied into me.
Yes.
So
because you're the product, you're the brand, and you're the product.
Yes. So they're like, so where do we get this quality? Moving into the event space, for example, where do we get this quality of image? Where do we get this quality of sound? And the fact that we had the studio and we had the film angle and the event space and everything from weddings to a lot of things we're involved in. People could see that as a marketing tool, and we were kind of that thing that brought a lot of clients in, and then we could hand them over to management. So I think playing that CEO role was kind of important for me.
I want to just know from, if you're watching and following the show from anywhere, wherever you are, we're live on Twitter at HTV1 Uganda, and of course on Facebook, House of Talent Uganda /HTV. You will be able to find the show there. And we're live on our YouTube studio, House of Talent Uganda /HTV. Navio is talking to you. Now, you dream to become a CEO. You're a musician, first of all. You don't even know where to start from. And the role of a CEO is not for every, person on the planet Earth. Not everyone who walks on the street can become a CEO. The role is quite very hectic and requires you to have a very specific sets of leadership abilities as well as management skills to lead. And we're gonna go for the next 2 minutes before we go for a break, Navio. And I just wanted to break it down.
Yes.
What is it like to be the balance between the CEO, Navio, and the artist, the CEO Daniel Chigozi, and the artist Navio?
Yes.
One is the brand. The other one is a leader.
Yes.
And this one is a product.
And they are together.
How do you balance this equation?
It's really tricky. I mean, getting a team who is used to that dynamic work, and of course, House of Talent. You guys have been part and parcel of even my earlier career, and things were very dynamic, and you kind of have to have those people you can rely on to delegate. Delegating, I think, should be, when they talk about leadership qualities, the ability to delegate should probably be in the first two of your priorities. The ability to look at something, oversee it, and then pass it on to a member of your staff or outsource if you must. Of course, everything happening in-house is better, but the ability to delegate, I think, is really important, because even though I'm handling whatever I need to handle, I could be in front of a stage trying to take a call to China, to sort out something, and my name gets announced to come on stage. If you do not have someone to pass that on to, then
somebody's calling and saying, hey, by the way, we were looking for the CEO of NavCop for the big deals. This is Sony, and you're going to say,
it's going the other side. It's really tricky to be on stage konnichiwa, konnichiwa. Switching from your Chinese to your Luganda can get tricky. So delegation, I think, is one of the most important tools that I've used to kind of balance the two. And then trying to, it sounds, of course there are other things before this, but I'll say healthy mind, healthy body. Trying to create a framework where my mind keeps working and keeps challenged, and I keep reading and keep trying to update myself is important. But also physically, exercising is important. I meet a lot of guys and CEOs of their companies, and they're like, for me, I don't believe in getting more than 3 hours of sleep, or I have insomnia, and I have that to me shows usually there's an imbalance in their life. you know, you can't sleep and whatnot, you have an excess of energy. Human beings are supposed to exercise. It keeps the mind healthy. So as well as keeping your mind healthy, exercising and you know, a balanced diet to a degree. You know, I'm not perfect, but a balanced diet and trying to stay physical, it really helps.
Wow.
You know, just as far as longevity is concerned. Because as soon as the body tires, the mind tires, and vice versa. So these two actually work in unison. I'd say also in terms of keeping balance between, you know, there's situations where it's past you. You have to choose which one you're going to do. You can never be ashamed of losing one deal in order to push the other. Sometimes you'll be in a situation where they invite you to Big Brother Africa. At the same time, there are people who want an event here, and they want you at the helm of that event. Big Brother, you have 400 million Africans watching, plus people online, plus you're getting paid. On the other side, you have a client that's come, future work, you might get a new reference. What do you choose? You know? So
that is a real balance for CEO.
So those kind of decisions, you know, and that's just the music standpoint, you know, so you can imagine all the other things and the farm as well.
And the farm and all this stuff.
So you have those kind of deals that come in where people need shipments of stuff and product from the farm, and you know, that's a very precise business. And that's one actually makes it easier to delegate. But as soon as you have stuff going in the event space and they want you at the helm, aid work, they need you at the helm. You know, if you're doing a refugee project, and then they're flying in Alicia Keys, and they need your presence there, you know, the balancing act is very careful. But I think as a CEO, the most important thing is knowing you are going to lose something
at some point.
You can, like they say, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. You know, so sometimes you try and pull 17 different things,
and then
you fail at 16. But if you pick 3 or 4 things, concentrate on those, you know, you have a shot of excelling.
Wow, we're going to take a break, Navio, and when we come back, Navio is going to be telling us, I think you probably have an understanding of why this show exists, which is to talk about change management, changing from Navio, the artist, the 14-year-old who found himself in the plane going to South Africa for Cora and, you know, clear cut in the group, and now to Navio that had to transform himself to being a businessman and being a CEO, and the complexities that comes with that are not something to play around with. He's been the only CEO so far we know as an artist transform himself into a CEO that is successful in actually running a corporation as a business. Now that's a plus. Stay right there, we're going for a break, and when we come back, Navio will be telling us more onto the CEO Bench. This is the CEO Bench. Welcome back from the break. This is the CEO Bench. My name is Eddie Okela, and in the studio is Daniel Lubwama Chigozi, Navio, as actually known to most of you. And if you're tuned to the show, I think you need to get a notebook now, because the CEO is going to give some tips on how you can transform yourself as a musician or as an artist into becoming a serious CEO with actually very tangible equity for your business. Navio, welcome back for the break.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm enjoying the discussion, and I want to take you straight to the next part of managing things, managing things. How do you manage change from being an artist to being a CEO? How do you manage that from a personal point of view?
Yes. So I think management is shaped by understanding your team, understanding your limitations, understanding your targets, and implementing that target with the members of the team who are going to who are actually concerned with that target. So with any change that happens, for example, you have a situation where you have an online segment of your business, but you've had the physical. So with music, for example, you talk about you had the physical side, shows, tours, endorsements, ads, the music itself, the CDs, distribution. That's the physical side of it. And then on the other side, you had the online element, promotion, marketing, brand, a lot of the other intangibles that you had. So if, for example, you take the biggest change that's happened in any business in the last 100 years, apart from World War, those were quite relevant. But COVID has been that biggest change that's happened in the world. So when you take an element like that, you're now taking out all the tangibles. Performing, gone. Touring, gone. Distribution, how you used to do it physically, gone. All of those elements now switch up. So a decision in a situation like that would be now to concentrate on the online. What are some of the intangibles that you've done? So, just using actually the Navio brand as a case study, though of course the company does a lot more, but using the Navio brand as a case study, we thought that a new album is ready. We move it onto the digital space for distribution, do all the usual, Spotify's and the rest. But also we needed an element that capitalized on the fact that we had 50,000 CDs landing at the airport. So you team up with other online people. For example, we had a border company. I want to mention it on the show as they are not a sponsor. But we had a border company that we teamed up with. And what we did in those first weeks was have them deliver it. So people who had the app, everyone who had the app would have that the Navio icon pop up. They could click on it, get delivered a CD, wrapped, sanitized and wrapped in plastic, just for extra safety. And so that's one of the little changes that we had to make, was moving from tangible things like we'll make up the money by just sending Navio to Amsterdam and Europe and Germany. He'll do his shows, come back, we're okay for the year. We couldn't do that. So now we had to depend on that. And then for the concert bit, what can you now do on the online space that you haven't utilized to the maximum? Well, you create the virtual concert for the same album you're pushing. So now we were moved into the virtual space. We ended up being the first artist in the country to do an album launch online, a virtual concert. And by then, the sponsors that we had approached, and even some of the sponsors we had for the physical one, were like, no, this will never work. The same sponsor now is
around and come back.
Running with the format. Yeah, they're running with the format that we had laid out for the virtual show. And so staying ahead of the problem has always served me quite well. Of course, you don't get to be in that wave at the peak of an idea, but at least starting the idea. Don't be afraid to start the idea and make the change. So if a change happens and you make the change, don't be afraid to make the change. Even though there haven't been any books written about it in any way. Common sense. Business should be called common sense. There's some common factors that run through everyday life that, A plus B equals C. If I create supply here, demand will come, or if I create demand here and the supply, the kind of those value chains that run through everything from business to music to anything. So I think if we capitalize on those, don't be afraid to make those changes. Don't be afraid to start. Don't be afraid to lead from the front, because when it does pay off, first of all, you're maybe the only person who has begun it, done it well, And so people are inclined to come back to you for that repeat business, you know, something that you've done. I mean, who is talking to CEOs?
That's why we're talking to CEOs.
You know,
we want to know from the CEOs and what does it really take and feel like to be the CEO of your company?
Yes.
What is your typical day like as a CEO? You've talked to this. Do you have a vision,
Yes.
mission?
Yes.
And what's our goal? Where do we see you?
Yes.
What's the difference between Navio the artist when he's singing and when you finally come and say, guys, I need to communicate to you, the team.
Yes.
Our vision for NavCop is to do this, this, and this, and we're going to go.
Yes.
How do they respond to you typically?
Yes, I think the response is always favorable, but of course there are always elements that you need to make sure aren't necessarily in the room when you switch back to business. You know, you don't need security in the boardroom. You know, you don't need your security there. So you know, we'll go, guys, relax. I will see you on the weekend for the show. But you know, but those guys actually, you'd be surprised where you can get ideas from. You know, having said that, I get a lot of ideas from all my team, from security to marketing to brand to my whole team. I get ideas from everyone. You know, driver. It doesn't matter where an idea comes from as long as it's good.
But that's typically not a typical thing for a CEO. CEOs, we think that CEOs are always just guys who say, I'm the CEO, so I'm the dreamer, I'm the passion, so all the dreams comes from me, or you guys just wait for me to think for you. But you're saying it's not the case.
It's definitely not the case.
Where did you learn all this thing from?
Being open-minded. I think one thing about having a business personality, someone who knows as much of investment as my father and my mother. Being around them really helped me to see that. And just general respect, because like I said, business is that, you know, common sense. And I feel like it's also a lot to do with respect. You know, the way that you treat people and interact with people, you know, should really be, you know, fair and ethical. And business, you know, one of the main 10 points in business is to be fair and ethical, you know. So in the same way, I think we should try and live our lives like that. And what that means is when you walk into a place, everyone from the door all the way to the chef has a role to play in making your experience in the business better. So you disrespect the doorman, will your car be there by the time you're back? Who knows? The receptionist is going to tell you where to go. You know, the manager is going to set you on a path. The chef is going to bring, you know, I feel like there are a lot of people that you interact with and you see them just because you are paying for something. You feel like you have the right to be disrespectful, and that is not the case. You know, just because you're paying for a product, you should still be fair, ethical. And I believe that is what creates longevity. So the shelf life for a rapper, for a music artist, is supposed to be 3 to 4 years in Uganda, maximum. So the fact that I have been in it for 22 years, I think there's a lot of things that happen. One, with as far as royalty collection, you know, a lot of artists will have hits, but if they're not performing, you know, you become 45, 50 years old and you can't really be out there, you know, like the young guys are. You're supposed to be getting your returns of royalties, but what we have is a lot of radio stations that don't play, well, play the music, but don't pay. And that's TV stations, that's online. We should be reaping royalties from that. And that should be collected automatically and given to us, I believe, as artists. And so you have that issue that plays a big role. But then also attitudes, and now the state of the industry Africa-wide has now come to bite us. Back in my day, I mean, it's very few artists who have performed in Pattaya, Ouagadougou, Bobo Dioulasso, Accra, Cotonou, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya,
Tanzania,
Congo. That's before we go to Europe, Germany. I mean, it's like 30, 35 countries. Nowadays, you have people performing like 3 countries. So we're not able to export our culture. The last barrier that has happened for artists now is also the fact that networks have refused to basically create an African framework for us to work in. So what this would entail is realizing that our diversity, and it doesn't matter how small a community is, they should be, their music should be judged for how good the music is. It's no longer about that. It's now become all about numbers. So it's very hard for a kid from Burundi to, you know, where they have 3-4 million to compete against Davido, where they have 190 million in the country and 40 in the diaspora. 240 million people. They, of course, they're going to have more numbers.
That's like it's not even pocket change.
Yes, you know, but it doesn't mean that other person's music is not good. So we have that issue as well. But those are some of the barriers, you know, we have to find a way around.
So do we see NavCop, for example, you know, taking us, filling that space that you talked about, the void that we have?
Yes.
You know, the lack of the Africans coming together to try and create something.
Yes.
The platform, like you said, the network, creating something that will take us, you know, give us the platform to promote our culture and export our culture, you know, and our talent across there. Do we see yourself working towards any of that as NavCop? Yeah,
I mean, it's a big risk. You know, one of the fundamentals of business is minimizing risk, taking risk, but minimizing it. So what it would actually entail is a revolutionary announcement and constant, you know, in-your-face marketing that talks about these issues. And no network wants to play your video at the same time as you criticizing something they're doing. And so that is the balance. But I feel like at some point we're going to have to just take a stand and say, hey, listen, you know, we have an amazing array of artists. People from Mozambique who will never see, because you just look at the numbers. Davido has 10 million. You look at you know, an artist from Madagascar and you say, whatever. You know, we have people from small countries who are doing amazing music, and I think as Africans, our diversity is what puts us there. So the way forward really would be to make an announcement, create that network, and maybe come together with a few acts to put that forward. But it wouldn't be a business move, more as just a ethical call, you know, to do it.
Why wouldn't you make it a business move as a strategy for NavCop?
Simply because the risk entails criticizing criticizing networks. So as soon as it would literally just be an artist, a standalone move, because as soon as you have companies going at each other, that is a problem. You don't want to drag a company, NavCop, into Navio's issues, or any artist that we work with. The company should always be standalone, and I think a lot of CEOs need to learn how to do that. Stand apart from your company. You know, Ruparelia Group should have nothing to do with Sudia's you know, own lifestyle and what he does. It's a separate company, separate entity. Are
you doing that yourself? Are you trying to separate yourself from Navio the artist to NavCop, or Daniel Chigozie as a CEO who is also an individual and the business?
Definitely.
How are you doing it?
Definitely. I think we've left NavCop as a body that now handles production, music, anything in the event space. And now we're creating subsidiaries that are totally, you know, totally differently titled and stuff, just to create a bit of that space and differentiation. Icon Studios, for example, would be an example. People will be like, call it NavCop Studios. People know what they're coming for. But at the same point in time, if Icon ends up signing artists or getting people on board, you want that to be a separate entity where it doesn't sound like artists are praising you. You know, as far as the farm is concerned, that is also now a separate company. You know, the real estate that I'm getting into this year, that is going to be a separate company. So I think when you're in the spotlight, all humans are fallible. All humans fall, but companies should be eternal, and companies should always be grounded. So keep them apart from your personal life.
Wow. Now we're going to dive into it. Our time is coming fast spent. We're going to dive into some discussion about transformative leadership approach and the leadership abilities that often defines a leader's level of effectiveness. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate the CEO of NavCop.
I'd say I'm a 7.3 on the weekend, and 8.5 during the weekdays. Yes.
why the differences?
Performances usually happen on weekends. So I need a little extra rest on the weekends, and then I can get back to work on by 8.5.
All
yes.
right. So when you look at the transformative leadership approach, what transformative leadership approach do you use at NavCop?
I think the most lending that ear, like you say, directives only become solid once everybody's opinion and once everybody has analyzed every single move that we're making. I cannot make a move without questioning it personally, and I cannot make a move for the company without every individual who is concerned with that coming to some sort of consensus. I need to know the ins, I need to know the outs, I need to know the good, I need to know the bad, how it affects people on the ground, how it affects the politicians. We need to know everything about a move. So I think the most transformative thing about that is that you're not dictating to your team all the time. You have a symbiotic relationship in which you are fallible. Something you say can be questioned, because the last thing you need is you saying, this is what we should do, everyone agree, and you walk out with it, and then people being like, oh, nah, that won't work. You have your head of marketing, head of the GM and whoever, none of them are on board with what you're doing. That for me it's a waste of time, and you end up spending millions, going the wrong way.
But Mr. Lubwama, this seems to be the modus operandi of operations for most leaders in Africa, and most corporate leaders, as well as from the political point of view to a corporation point of view. What sets you apart from this, which has been our way of practicing things? Yes,
I think what sets us apart is our ability to change with the seasons. When you have an industry that's built up on between cassette tape and physical distribution on the street, and it moves online, it seems like a simple move, but you have hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who instantly become unemployed, and you have these millions of people who have know-how about the music industry and knowledge about the music industry, but no way to now facilitate and move that forward. I think what sets us apart is our ability to stay versatile, our ability to respond to what the market wants. It should be, it's easy to change your music, or it's not easy, but we find we have practiced to the point where we can change our music to move with the times. The fact that we can release stuff that we released in '99 and release stuff in 2009 and 2019, that's like a 20-year, some people will say 30-year differential that we managed to stay on top, and getting Album of the Year 2018 is not just about the music, it's about how we position and place ourselves in the new framework. So I think staying versatile would be that.
All right. I want to take you to change management quickly. Change management, Mr. Daniel Chigozie, requires that COVID-19 has come and we have to change so many things.
Yes.
It is messed up, it has messed up a lot of things.
Sure.
And how do you manage that? So change management ordinarily requires that we think through the process. That's number one. Number two, it's communicated to the people.
Yes.
Number three, it is manageable.
Yes.
Number four, the relationships are managed. And number five, that we actually have the control, identification, and implementation of the required changes within self.
Yes.
Which means starts with you as the CEO of NavCop,
yes,
a business which is NavCop,
yes,
and a similar organization of the foray into becoming something that moved into a nation,
yes,
and affected the nation.
Yes.
Did you go through this when moving from an artist to becoming the CEO of NavCop?
Definitely.
And was it communicated?
Yeah, I think the ability to assess risk should be something on that list as well.
Yes.
Because nobody was really sure about the threat level that we were going, that we were undergoing. So people were like, this is now being just put in our faces for political reasons. I'm like, it's hard to say that when you have 600,000 people who've dropped dead in America, who have more than enough ventilators and the healthcare to solve these problems.
Yes.
You know, and the same thing, I mean, our South African brothers, you know, close to 60,000 people fall dead on the street. And that is, remember, it's 1%. So it's 29 million people in the States who have had the disease and recovered. And it's just that, you know, 700,000 who passed on. So it's really a sticky situation, you know, but being able to assess risk, I think, should be also an important thing, because you get into that situation, you've made all the changes necessary, you make that shift I was talking about earlier from a physical entity to now going online and, you know, getting into some of those intangibles, and then being able to actually assess the risk. You know, can we go to that refugee camp? Can we perhaps travel to Tanzania, who, you know, at first had a policy of not putting on masks at all? You know, these are all small questions, and I think having the ability to assess risk versus reward became one of the most instrumental things. You know, it's like, can we Zoom it? Can we do a Zoom? Or do we all, 5 of us, need to go and sit down in the conference? So risk assessment, I think, became, for me, like, became pretty much the forefront. Can I really risk sending More to that meeting? Or should I tell her to Zoom? You know, small things like that, I think, came into play heavily when COVID came through. But the ability to change and stay versatile, I think, is ingrained in us because of the longevity we've had in the career. So we may do.
Do you think that is available to everyone out there, to every CEO out there at your level? Do you think they think that way?
No, I think it's such a divided thought process. You know, you walk into one meeting, you still have CEOs throwing their hand out, even wanting to bizu, give you a trick, you know. You meet those guys from the islands, the guys are doing the forehead thing, they rub noses, you know. So you're meeting people in those business capacities who, some of them really don't care. And these are CEOs in their 60s, they're in the target group. And so also managing those relationships, like you mentioned, is very important. If someone puts his hand out to you that you're making a deal with, do
you refuse?
Do you recoil?
Do you say, coronavirus? There's money here.
You know, you know, because now you're in a framework where you're dealing with their how sensitive they are to the issues and their own assessment. They have assessed that the risk is nominal. You know, so all of those little things, I think, came into play.
Okay. We're going to take another break, Navio, and when we come back, we'll do the last round of this interview on the bench. Thank you very much. You who is joining us from all across. In the studio is Navio, aka actually Navio, but the real name is Daniel Lubwama Chigozi, is the CEO of NavCop Group, and he's here in the studio, and we're talking change management and transformation of a person to becoming a leader, and what a leader means to an organization like NavCop. And of course, you who is watching at home should be able to send us kisses and disses. Please, this if you think we're not doing very well. But remember, the CEO signed the check, and then you're going to show up in the... So think about your thinking. Basically, that's what Navio was saying. Think about every process and make sure that you process that information well enough to make an informed decision going forward. Stay right there. We'll be right back after the break. This is the CEO Bench. Welcome to the family talk. My name is Eddie Okila. It's yet another Sunday afternoon or morning or afternoon or evening, depending on which part of the world you are located or geographically found at this hour of day. Okay, while we bring you the family talk show. The family talk show exists to give us an insight into how we should manage our families and what we should do to make our families better. And of course, this particular episode of the show today, we're looking at the role of fatherhood in our life. Lessons learned from fathers. We did the lessons learned from our mothers, and I think it was quite very, fantastic to, hear people share ideas and stories and stuff that came from their mothers. Now we want to hear the ideas and stuff that came from fathers. Okay, last week on the show we had a very interesting topic. When your father was not part of your life, or when you finally realize that the man who you called a daddy is not your real father, how do you deal with the emotions that follow when you learned when you are 45? Some people learn when they are 50 and they start to blame their mothers. Sylvain was on the show last week and is back on the show. And Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe, the resident panelist, is here. Is the father of all the people sitting on the show today. And the man was married to so many people. He works and marries. Welcome to the family talk. My name is Eddie Okila. It's yet another Sunday afternoon or morning or afternoon or evening, depending on which part of the world you are located or geographically found at this hour of day. Okay, while we bring you the family talk show. The family talk show exists to give us an insight into how we should manage our families and what we should do to make our families better. And of course, this particular episode of the show today, we're looking at the role of fatherhood in our life. Lessons learned from fathers. We did the lessons learned from our mothers, and I think it was quite very, fantastic to, hear people share ideas and stories and stuff that came from their mothers. Now we want to hear the ideas and stuff that came from fathers. Okay, last week on the show we had a very interesting topic. When your father was not part of your life, or when you finally realize that the man who you called a daddy is not your real father, how do you deal with the emotions that follow when you learned when you are 45? Some people learn when they are 50 and they start to blame their mothers. Sylvain was on the show last week and is back on the show. And Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe, the resident panelist, is here. Is the father of all the people sitting on the show today. And the man was married to so many people. He works and marries people. That is his job. Pastor Joshua, welcome to the show. Are we still bongering?
Well, it's you with a new story.
We need to teach Sylvain how this thing is done. He's still learning how to do it. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Pastor, a recap of where you were last week.
Where was I last week?
You had a son who had a father.
Yes.
Who chose you to be the father.
Yes.
What was the story like?
Yes. This young man, his mother used to come to our cell, and that's how we got to meet him. But he was born out of wedlock. His mother died, and so his father was not so happy with him, and technically his father was not in his life. So some of us, by God's grace, we feature in his life, talk to him, challenge him to push on, challenge him to forgive his father, challenge him to do what is right. And in all that hustle and bustle, he finally does a degree in Makerere University, a degree of electrical engineering, no, electronic engineering. That's what he did. And he graduated, and he said, I need a party, and I want you to be present because you've been part and parcel of my life. And yeah, so there's no way I could be here and be the second missing father in his life. I had to be the father. Yes. I had to be there. I knew it was a testimony, an encouragement for me, but also for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Sylvain, you've heard from Pastor Joshua Mugabe. I mean, you were on the show last week as your first time on the show. What was it like, and what feedback did you get from those who watch you on the show, and what were they telling you? How should we improve? What should we drop? What should we add? Or were you a missing father somewhere, or you were a full father somewhere? Yes.
Well, I think I talked to someone just after here. Unfortunately, she had not watched the show, but she felt like she would like to listen in. I hope she's listening in now. But my feeling when I left here, I realized, wow, I have a story to tell. Because, like I told you, not living with your father or realizing that was not your father, it's not the only way to struggle with it. Because my case is that I was at a point when I would ask my mom, is this my real dad? So he can be there, but he behaves as though he's not there. You don't feel that he is your father. So there are many angles along which you can feel you're lacking a father figure within your life. But in all that we had a conversation about, I was so happy that I told my part of my story, because who knows, there could be another one like the one Joshua had gone to support, to be with after his graduation, who is thinking, I think the world is turning like a box on me. I don't have a future because I don't have a father. Yet it is not necessarily true. There are some fathers who are there, but they are figures. They are not touching the hearts of the ones they give birth to. So I'm glad I was here, and I'm glad I'm back. I hope I will share a little more. And I think it is an interesting topic. It is something we need to dig deep into. Like, I'm so much interested in politics, but you know very well that if our families are not really firm, if our fathers are not really strong to impart the values and culture, family culture, then eventually we shall have the kind of governments that we have that we always complain about. So it has where it starts from.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Wow. Well, you've heard from Sylvain right there, and you've heard from Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe. We want you to share this particular program far and wide. I don't know about you, but I have met so many people who learned about the situation surrounding their father and fatherhood from a very later age or stage in their life, and they started to struggle with it. Some have blamed their mothers for not being honest. Others have blamed their fathers for being a runaway dad. Others have said, but where were you? What happened? How did, there's always a lot of sort of emotional situation that surround a person, a man, when he doesn't understand who his true identity should be up to. On earth here, we know that there is Jesus and there is God who says, I have adopted you. First of all, I was your father anyway. I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb.
Yes.
And so the story goes on. So it's a discussion we're having today, and I want the team to put that question up there. The topic continues, and if you could just put it up there so that everyone can be part of it. And I want to read it. The topic, which is on our series of fatherhood, is when your father is not your real father, how do you deal with the emotional situation later? How do you deal with it? How do you cope up with it? Do you blame your mother or your father? And Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe, I want to start from you from that point. If I am there and I learned about my father at 32, 42, and all along my emotion have been invested in this gentleman whom I have called a dad or a father for a long period, for 42 years.
Yeah.
And my mother was quiet, never said it. And then she says, oh, by the way, I think you need to now know the truth. The truth is, this is not your real father. Your real father is this one here who lives in this particular area. He's still alive or he's dead. Normally when he's dead is understandable, because then you cannot start. You connect with a few uncles here and there, and then life goes on. But if he's alive, and now you have to go and reclaim situation, there's this whole thing about property. You could be your father's heir to the throne, and stuff like that. So the sense of belonging and identity begin to clash. And when that happens, how should a 42-year-old man or a 32-year-old man or even a 45-year-old man deal with it? Some people blame their mothers. Others have said that my mother was useless. Others have said that from that point I terminated my relationship with my mother because I felt like my mother was dishonest. How many things did she hide from me? Or is she hiding from my siblings as well? How do we deal with that situation, Pastor?
Wow. You're raising many things in this one question.
Yes.
And maybe we need to distill some of the issues. One, there is me, myself, and what has happened to me. Then there are facts of what has happened all along until I'm 42. Then there's the issue, what do I do after getting new facts? And so to begin with, what do I do, I myself, at 42 or 50 something, when this issue now becomes an issue? This is my recommendation, because like we are told in life, you cannot stop the birds from flying over your head. Sometimes they can even poo on your head, all right? But you can stop them from building a nest and laying eggs there, okay? So, but if you say now these birds and my hair, see what they've done, and you don't advance from there, you can't blame the bird. Now that has happened to you is a personal responsibility. And legally, when you turn 18, it's no longer you blaming somebody else. You must take personal responsibility. And in the Bible, I think when you turn 12, at least that was a Jewish tradition, you turn 12, they start counting you as a man. But I think you go to war at age 20. So if you're 42, that means you're twice qualified for going to war. Okay? Yeah. And the challenge you have is, how do I win this battle? The issue of identity, yes, knowing who your actual father is, not even actual father, biological father, because there's the biology which helps you to settle some of the question of who am I, where do I come from, who am I connected to. It gives you access to what I would call earthly bits. That is key. But there are people that can function as fathers in your life. The fatherly role, which includes guidance, which includes protection, which includes provision, to a place where you're able to stand on your own. All right? And that person, in my view, qualifies more as a father than somebody who provided the sperm that ignited your life. All right? So we want to go beyond that. We do respect, because when God gave the man the responsibility to be a father, to represent him, there's an honor that comes with it, being a father. Although many have abused it, many don't even understand it, many simply live on, some carrying over the pain. But I think one of us needs to break that chain and say, you know, this stops here. I know who I am. I'm a child of Eddie. Okay, now I've been told at 50 that I'm not a son of Eddie. But Eddie has invested his life in me. Eddie has given of his money, has given of his time, he's protected me, he's trained me. I am who I am today because of his direct investment in my life. Honor is due to give honor to whom honor is due. So I ought to honor that man, whether he's a provider, and allow me to say of that, initiating sperm or not. I think we must go beyond the biology and get to the place of function. And that is a personal responsibility for him to say, okay, fine. Are there things that I miss from my father? Maybe yes. All right? And that's why maybe you also said that probably now you're missing the inheritance of the father. I like what one gentleman said, because again, he grew up with his father. Direct, this is my father, but his father was clear. So this is my property. Not yours, all right? So,
Yeah.
the reason I'm sending you to school, and I think by the age 10, when their father was building the house, okay, he told them there's no way I'm going to hire a truck to carry bricks to build my house when you kids are here.
He will carry the bricks.
Yes, so they carried 10,000 bricks from the nearby, I don't know what they call it in English, that place where they baked bricks. They would carry them to the building site so that they learn to work. And I'll tell you that gentleman is a high entrepreneur. He made up his mind, I'm not here to fight for the property of my father, I'm here to have my own property. And I think that's the attitude we should be having at this time. Not when daddy are you dying so that I inherit. No. When am I acquiring more property and substance and honor than my father? I think that should be what drives us.
Okay.
Yes.
Sylvain, you have had Pastor's point. If you will wrap it up on that point just before we go for a break. The story Pastor has given us is one. What I learned from is don't dwell so much on what is past. Even the ones who you are not calling is your father, you're trying to sort of like divorce the emotion from when you've learned who the real father is. Still invested his emotion on you by just allowing you to be in his presence and to take you and to say, this is my son. Because also there are two ways that gentleman knew that you are not his, but he started with you. His came afterwards. And so that was emotional investment from that gentleman to you. So while you are dealing with the situation of the motherhood, you need to look at that. But there was a lesson also we learned from you, and Pastor just saying work hard. The lesson we learned from you last week, which is where we're going to pick from when we come back from the breaks of him. First of all, you're talking about adding your point to what Pastor said, and then we want you to touch on that moment when your father also said, okay, if you are leaving, you are done. You are no longer my son, and you are rejected by your own father. How did you deal with the entire emotion? Anyway, you are dealing with a real life situation.
Well, let me wrap up on what Pastor said. I think he's very, very right, because it's so sad that nowadays in Uganda, not just within our area in Rukunjiri, I think it's all over. You can see it on Agatari Konfufu. Old people are fighting for property, and they have their own children. They're fighting for property of their own fathers. In other words, the grandchildren are seeing their uncles and aunties really stretching, going to court and doing all those things just because they are fighting on one small thing, a piece of property. Yet, if they had intentionally, like the example Joshua gave, trained their own children to work towards independence, then these fights would actually not be there. So I strongly feel, one, when you realize this is not your father, finally, he's not your biological father, you don't have to carry it forward and keep saying because every because should be having, you know, a response onto it. It just doesn't keep like because. In any case, it doesn't grow you. It's not an investment. You're not going to harvest anything from there. It is important you get to know that your father lived a life and you're going to live a life. It is important to know that you're not going to change your biological father. Whatever you'd really want to know, you will never at any one time find your biological father, even if you pray, you know, storms to come down. Your father will never change. Will remain that biological father. I think you need to shift and say, oh, wait a minute. I could even live without my biological father. Thank God. And now, God, what do I do with my life? Because if you do not focus on to that, chances are you're going to be competing with something that is not there. And in the process, you will crash. You remember I was mentioning, you will be wanting to live the life which is different from your father's, but you didn't see your father's life anyway. You know him as your father. You don't know his life growing up. So you're competing with something you do not know its dimensions, its details. You don't have answers as to why he could have treated you the way he treated you. If he abandoned you, why he could have abandoned you, whether he really quarreled with your mom, or if your mom was the one stubborn. You don't know the surrounding. you don't know the surroundings in there. But you're only complaining, my father. You're only saying that from there, the person you talked about, from there I cut my relationships with my mother. Does he know that he was in the hands of his mother up until the time he actually had the reason that, well, my mother did not live with my biological father? What if his mother decided to terminate his life? Why can't he be thankful that he's actually been brought up to this very level, that he's even in the position to think, to reason, to say, let me live my life? Other than that, we are going to stay in this situation, rotation, thinking, and so much, unfortunately, that's actually going to affect us. At the end of the day, if you're normal, biologically normal, you'll have feelings, you'll want to marry, but you'll want to get married. So at some point, you're going to be a parent. And when these things stay within you, when you don't release, when you don't seek God, they will trickle down onto your children. And unfortunately, they'll be suffering from something they have no clue about. And you'll end up also not having a good family. That's what I could put across.
Well, thank you very much, Sylvain. And we're now going to take a break. And when we come back, we will be talking to Sylvain about how he personally, as a person, dealt with the situation when he wasn't agreeing with his dad, and his dad says, okay, out of my life, out of my compound. But now they have a relationship, and then he goes on to graduate from Makerere University, and now the prodigal son returns home. The story is the other way around, not like the one you know in the Bible. What happened?
Father.
Yes, exactly, the prodigal father and the prodigal son. Let's go for a break, and when we come back, the Family Talk Show will return, and we want to hear your comments and your kisses and your disses. If you have a story, please share with us. We're going to read it here. We'll be right back after the break.
People at the moment are struggling to understand the older generation because times have changed. Technology has come in.
They've moved on.
Yes.
we're the ones sitting back and wondering, what is my child on to? TikTok has surpassed WhatsApp. The other one I call, I never call it Facebook, it's Bookface. Why are you on Bookface? Dad, it's Facebook.
Yes.
Me, I keep saying, I have a foot amongst the millennials.
Yeah.
And I understand the traditionalists.
Okay.
There's a song in the 60s, by the way, and in the 90s, 70s, where they're like, parents don't understand.
Yes.
Remember Prince?
Yes.
Prince.
You will put that later and then explain, use that.
Welcome back from the break. This is the Family Talk Show. My name is Eddie Okila, and in the studio is Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe and Selvin Gumisiriza. I think I've gotten the name right. Gentlemen, welcome back to the job.
Yeah.
And of course to the show as well. This is a job for you because you are sharing some really deep stuff that touches many people's lives. And Selvin, just before we went for a break, we were summarizing that first question and that first discussion. If you're 42 or 30 and you learned that your mother now tells you that this was not your father, you effectively shared on that one. We want to just dive a little bit from where we stopped last week. Last week you shared with us the story of you passing on your dad. And the reason why Family Talk Show exists is so that we can bring some really practical situations happening in our families, in our lives, to share with those who may not be able to get opportunity to come here so they can learn a thing or two from. There's that story about you and your dad when he said, you're not listening to me and I'm done. And off the camera you discussed a very interesting moment when you are sent to take the food and your dad says, take that food back to your mother and ask her why is the food coming late, where was she? And you felt like this is not right at 12 years of age. The actions that followed were quite very interesting. I know a son to a man who did that at 10. And he got a knife and stood in between and said, Dad, I'm going to sort you out today. With a knife in between when there was a fight going on. The father disowned him and said, after all, you're not mine. So he lived knowing that that was not his dad. He was taken away from the father, kept with the uncle for some time. The mother reaffirmed to him at 24, that is your real father. The action you did angered him the most, so he rejected you and suspected me to have been doing some gallivanting around the community, so he didn't believe you were his son. And so 24, 32, he's still struggling. He's now 35 from that episode that happened. He regrets what happened, but he said that was my father. If he cannot realize that it was his mistake that led me to doing that because I was saying it, then there is no point of relationship between me and my father, because up to now he has never realized that he is the problem. So 32 years of age, he's still dealing with the emotion. He doesn't believe his father understands. But we have you here at 12.
Yeah.
I mean, would you like to share with us that, just that little bit?
Well, why not? I have to share it because, I mean, he's 35. I'm about 9, 10 years older than him.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. In an event you are caught in an environment that you're not part of, you're really not created. Humanly speaking, you want to find out, why has it happened? And why is it happening to me? In the first instance, I'm not the one who had cooked the food. I am his son. I was only given the food to take it to him. I do not see any reason as to why he could say, why did she cook late? Take it back. And then follow it, into this almost physical fighting. A young man around that age, what comes in mind is to sort things out. And I really understand that 10 years old guy. Not to justify what he did, but I understand him, because the last thing you want to see is your mother crying. She had better cry not in your sight, and especially for boys, at least not in your sight. At least find her crying and ask her what really happened, but not even when you're seeing that that's the cause. But here's what moved on. In my case, more or less the same thing. And it's so easy for a parent to easily say, after all. And the statement is after all, meaning probably has been struggling with it. Or sometimes you make statements wanting to deviate the thinking pattern of the other person so they could come back and apologize. In my case, the next day I was denied to go to school. I stayed in the hills looking after cows. And I came with a neighbor. And when I reached, the neighbor told me, you know what? The dad is the dad. Get down, get your sticks. Surely, yes, I got them. But do you know what I was feeling?
The real
yes.
African one.
Yeah, but do you know what I was feeling? I am here because you've said I do. I am down, but in my heart, I am up. That's what runs in the
How old were you?
I was 12. No, I was 12. 12, 13 there. No, I was 13 because I was now in senior 1. At that point, you will get down, and by the time you get down, you don't even feel the pain. You don't even think you're going to have to feel the pain. You're only saying, finish. I just want to go. Now, at that point, you are really hardening a child's heart. So unfortunate. And if you do not think about it and begin looking at a point where you can begin to reconcile that, it trickles down. It goes down. And like I told you, at 16, I had to leave. It was so simple. Because I said, you know what, Dad? It doesn't look like we're going to have a life. And I don't want to hurt you. Because I had siblings.
Were you his firstborn?
Yes, I'm his firstborn. I had siblings. They're still there. So there was a possibility of choosing to go into this masculine nature and choose to fight my dad. But I don't know who would have hurt the other. Possibly I would have hurt him. I was watching lots of movies. I had lots of tactics around that. So you do not know how I would have you don't know how I would have hurt him.
You had all the Kung Fu movies.
All of them.
You were in China,
I was
in
watching
Japan,
the Bruce Lees, the Rambos, the Schwarzeneggers, the Chuck Norris, and I still remember them. You see, off head. So that would mean that if I applied, I could touch him a wrong part. Maybe he gets lame, and my siblings are saying, you're the one.
Yeah.
Or it could go even worse. He dies. And they say, you killed our dad. So all those elements need to be thought about. Now, thank God, incidentally, I had not even given my life to Christ. I don't know how the Holy Spirit held me in that situation. But I chose to say, you know what, Dad, it's okay. I need to move on. And he had never told me I'm not his son. But for when I was moving out is when he said, when you leave this house, don't count yourself among my children. I said, okay. But what is the benefit of staying under these conditions when I even don't feel like I'm your child or anyway?
By your action.
By your actions.
Yeah.
And I moved. Fast forward, I lived with a good Samaritan. I went to work. But what was running in my mind is that I am missing school.
So first of all, pause it right there. What work were you going to do when you left home at 13?
You can do
I know we've all done some crazy things at 13, but yes, You
can do any work. You can, I was looking after cows. You can graze somebody's cows. And it's very common. After 1 year, they'll give you a cow. Or you agree on a pay per month. They'll give you that one.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you say, you know what, this is the life I'm in, so let me live like this. But the beauty with this, and you know, when God is into it, he will still direct it his way. The people in whose hands I landed were so gracious. 5-6 months later, they're asking me, you boy, you never asked for your money. I said, yeah, I didn't leave home because of money. I left home because I was denied school. So the question was, do we put you at school as who? But will you even manage the work? I said, well, let's try it. Fast forward, put me at school, senior 3 now, 17. They put me at school, and God in his own way, I was never the last. I was always attentive in class. So my scores at that time made them tick. I said, you know what, you can even drop work. Focus on school. So when God is into it, he will actually make it work.
This is somebody, a stranger, not you.
Totally, not anywhere related. The person who took me there took me to this gentleman, was actually the fiancé to this gentleman because he was a neighbor. That's all I remember. And 4 months later, they married. That's all I knew. Finishing my senior 3, I landed in the hands of my uncle, who had been away from my life for about 8-9 years. And when he saw me, my grandmother was so lovely and said, this is Sylvain. He said, oh, this is the boy. And life changed. Immediately I was picked from Rukunjiri to Kampala, and things turned around. But does that mean that I stopped remembering what was happening home? No. Every other challenge I faced within Kampala, I subjected it to the fact that my dad did not really do what? Did not take care, you know?
Yeah.
At that point, you keep thinking, it is because my dad. It is because my dad. It is. So you always have where to fall to complain or to give a reason that things are not happening the way they are happening. Here is one interesting component of it. Sometimes the parents also do not know what to do. They also don't know what they are going through. They don't know why they are doing what they are doing. You know how villages are. There are many spirits in there, and there are many good-willed people, but there are also bad people as well. And the competition is in how much land do you have, how many cows, how many children, you know, where are your children going to school, where are mine going to school. Those are sort of the competitions. Now, when they see your son or your daughter are doing well, it's not because they're not necessarily that much happy that your son and daughter are really doing well. They wish theirs were doing well. So I really do not know what my dad was struggling with. But it took me time to think that way. I can guarantee you, senior 4, I was not friendly. Senior 6, not at all. College, not at all. It is until I gave my life to Christ, I said, okay, something has got to be different here. I need to really, really, really find out. And it turns out that the challenge with parents from the village especially, and when they don't have people speaking to them, they struggle to apologize. They struggle to reconcile. Yeah.
Pastor Joshua, you will pick from that point.
Yes. They struggle to reconcile because this young boy or young man, he also would like to hear his dad say, my son, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to tell you that. Or I did it, but I didn't know it would really bring about that. Along the way, they would realize that, wait, my dad is human. The challenge the biggest mistake, I'm quite independent. And I can guarantee you it is growth. It is work in progress. It doesn't come immediately because it took a long time. You can be sure I've cut very many stories in the middle. Yeah. It took a long time. So it has got to take another long time to get back. The most important thing for me here is this could also happen to me if I keep at it in that context. So I have got to, as much as possible, pray, God, help me that if it is a curse, we cut it at that point.
Yeah.
My family does not go into that state. And looking back, surely, I just find my growing up, my grandfather was fighting his dad, my uncles were always fighting with my father. So it was sort of a war zone in that sense. So me being beaten and thrown out of the home, it was one other thing they could easily do. But the question is that what I really want to have in my family growing up?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the grandfather that I want my grandchild to look at and say, I remember you fighting my dad.
Yeah.
So, and that gentleman also has got work to do, even at his 35,
Yeah.
because a lot of it that we learn while watching, most of the things you don't have to talk. We just have to see you, we have to hear you talk on phone. Nowadays, life has changed, many people have got phones. But even when on phone, it is possible to tell that this conversation is not sweet, this is sour. When you get off the phone, it is possible for someone to know this is bitter. So let's really watch out. My final statement on that is, you can forgive your dad.
Okay.
You can. Because if you do not forgive, Mandela calls it taking poison, and you expect the other person to die. Someone has hurt you, so you stay with this anger. You don't know why he has hurt you. You don't know where it has come from. You stay annoyed with him, or you stay annoyed with her. He doesn't know, or he knows, and then he's happy with it that you're actually annoyed, but you stay on it.
Yeah.
He describes it as for you choosing to take poison, and you think, for that matter, the other person you hate is going to die. You can choose to deliberately forgive whoever has hurt you, and especially to the young ones or anyone listening about cases between him and his dad. You have to choose to. It is one of the hardest things to do. I can guarantee you, when I said I forgive, I can give you a short scenario here. I'm in this training and we were doing inner healing and emotional wholeness. This man says, get a piece of paper, divide it into two. On one side, write the people you want to forgive. On this other side, you write the people you want that they forgive you. Now, because when you're angry, you think everybody owes you. so you start writing.
Yes.
I wrote 1, 2, the third name was my dad. 3, 4, 5, the sixth name was my dad. Up until, I remember very well, 52, I was still writing people to forgive. But I was saying, God, I can forgive all, but not this.
It's number 6 and number
yes.
12.
Number 7, 6, and 12.
Yeah. But I remember when I wrote that name down, I crashed. I cried. But here's the beauty of it. I got relieved. And at that point, I began seeing him as somebody that is human, that made mistakes, some of which he doesn't know, and I began trying to create a relationship, back. And it is now a little bit sweet to realize that you get home. Sometimes he gives me a call. I say, son, daddy, it's so sweet to hear that statement.
Wow.
But it's something you've got to work for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, Pastor Joshua Mugabe has a lot to tell us from where Sylvia stopped, and that will be the last part of this show today. I told you the Family Talk Show exists for us to share the deepest part of our stories to get somebody healing tomorrow. And of course, every family in the world has got that problem. Let's get into a break, and when we come back, Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe will pick it up from there, and that will take us to the close of the show. The Family Talk Show continue after this break. It is the Family Talk Show. Welcome back from that break. And this last part of the show, Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe is going to take a little bit of a moment to take us through, of course, what Sylvain has just been sharing with us. I think you've heard the story of Sylvain, and I think it's a story full of lessons to learn, things to drop, and things to pick from. The one thing I understand from there, gentlemen, welcome back to the show, is that you can forgive. It doesn't matter. That's what I was waiting for. What is the take home from this long story? Which part of it we have even missed? But what's the take home? He said you can forgive.
Yeah.
52 was the list. I
Yes.
don't know what was on the other right side.
Number 6 and number 2.
Number 2. No, number 3, number 6
this
as
sounds
well.
like election results.
Pastor, pick it up from there. From the story of Sylvain,
Yeah.
what lessons do we learn from here, and how can we get out of this? If you've been listening very critically, I
Yeah.
want you to share your thoughts.
I'll not list them in order of importance,
Yeah.
but they are key things, because he is lucky, at least he grew up with his dad to age 12 and then was forced into a new dimension.
Yeah.
Some of us were privileged that we didn't grow up with our father, so
Is that the privilege? Okay, yes. So Sylvain's context, that's a privilege.
Yes,
yes.
we didn't have to go to either hold a knife and be rejected, whichever.
Yes.
We were rejected before we were born.
Yeah.
That we were out on that. But picking from, you remember he began the story on when he was doing studies on emotional healing.
Yes.
Or inner healing.
Yes, inner healing.
Yes.
Yes.
Sometimes we know how to go to hospital for physical healing, but we struggle with going to a place where we'll be helped to connect with our emotions. Yet I think God created us spiritual and also emotional. And the state of our emotions have an impact. You want to hold a knife to ease those emotions, to run away, you harden in life. I think if there's something we need to go to is we need to get in touch with our emotions and find healing. You may want to pay a counselor, you may want to study books, but you need to come face to face with your emotions. The things you've done, the things that have been done to you are key. I do personal counseling with people, and some of it has to do with dealing with my past, appreciating. Some of us went to schools that up to now we don't want to mention that they are schools. So those are key things that we want to deal with. So we must get to a place of emotional healing, because if you are sick on the inside and finally you produce sick results, you will infect others. And so we must find that healing. And then the other is, he looked for forgiveness. We must make a choice to forgive. I told you this young man last Sunday I was with, one of his struggles, how do I forgive? There are several people I told, it's important that you get to forgive. Because when you forgive, you may not necessarily be released by the other person, but it eases the burden that you're carrying. I know you do weights, and weights do a lot in
muscle development.
Yes,
yes.
But that some people are carrying weights that they never rest from, and they have such baggage muscles which they cannot use. In fact, I tell people they could by now be world champions because the weights they are carrying are so heavy.
Yeah.
But they need to put those weights down and find relief. And that is by finding forgiveness, which also goes hand in hand with asking for forgiveness. Because sometimes we've offended people, that's the least we had. Those who you need to forgive.
We never had to know.
Yeah,
the left was full. We didn't hear the right side, whether he ever had anyone on this side. Yes.
We must learn to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Now, part of the challenge with us men is we think that when we act away from asking for forgiveness or saying I'm sorry, will be understood. But I think the principle in life is, yes, if you've offended, say I am sorry. And also say I have forgiven you. Those words are important. Don't simply act, because people will not fully understand. They may even think that your act of repentance is more of a cover-up. So it's important that we get to say, I'm sorry, I did this wrong, and the Bible also adds on, go the extra mile. They call it restitution. Go the extra mile, restore. You borrowed somebody's cow, it died in your house. Don't simply say, sorry, your cow died in my house. No, pay it back with a calf. All right, so something like that, it helps you to go to the next level. So there's asking for forgiveness, looking for healing. Then I like what somebody said, don't waste your pain. Don't waste your pain. The things you've gone through that have hurt you and formed your thinking, don't waste them. Ask yourself, what do I pick from these pains so that I can live better? Am I going to repeat the story or not? If I've learned to live with this pain, how do I go to the next level to prevent it from continuing to, not to, because, I mean, having suffered the things that you've suffered, you've grown without your father, then why do you want to become like your father? I think that's wasted. Okay? I think that's wasted.
Yes.
And yet, sometimes, like you said, we learn by what we see more than what we hear.
Yeah.
And so sometimes some of us find ourselves in a state of repeating the very mistakes our fathers did. Not that they sat down in a class. And again, that's another thing I want to tell people. Look through what are the trends that are in your family and what counter action can you take to break that trend. All right? Some of us pray, which is good. But in addition to prayer, you must take action. Like, I mean, if they were not paying school fees for the girls in your family, break that trend by paying school fees for girls. If people are not getting married in your family, make sure you work towards proper marriage in your family. If they don't have land titles in their names, get land titles in the names of the family. Because sometimes that's where troubles begin. Some legal things are not completed. So we want to sort some of those legal issues that must be dealt with. So that's what I was saying. Don't waste your pain.
Pastor, there is a part where Sylvain says that when he returned from the hills looking after the cows, and the neighbor said, you know what? This is not going well for you.
Yes.
Your father is quite very furious with you.
Yes.
I think the best thing to do is go received.
Yeah.
There was a heart there of him when he says, I went down to be beaten.
Yeah.
I wasn't caring about the pain that I was going to be given stroke. Basically, the heart has hardened.
Yes.
The pain was gone. You can cane me, get done with it. I don't care. But we are not finishing now.
Yes.
Many of us often get to that point where we leave the child. We don't even know how deep it is when we're caning the child.
Yeah.
He went down, received the strokes, walked out with it, says, you're done with it, you're happy?
Yeah.
I move on with this one.
Yeah.
But you've not solved the problem. How do we help men who have gone through that kind of thinking, like Sylvain has just shared, to outcome that emotion which takes so long? Sylvain says at some point that the day his father called him, this took long. So I can imagine 13 to until 2009, he was there December, and the father called him to wish him a Happy New Year.
Yes.
He said everything from him just.
But 2009 was 2019.
Yes.
Not. I mean, from when it happened, that was 1993.
Yes.
When I left home. His first call, Happy New Year, was 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, you forgive him because MTN came into being in 2000. So, even if he had wanted to call, there was no cell then. There was landlines. You had to go and book somewhere on TV Road. So we will forgive him for that.
Yes. But yes, Pastor, how do you help that heart to get out? Because many of us are holding on to that.
Yeah.
We are very good giving out to people.
Yeah.
But we go back like musicians do. I always tell people musicians are very good at going to sing.
Yes.
In fact, we have a program here called the Sunday Rise Show, which is which focus on worship leaders.
Yeah.
We've
Some
had
people in my house are preparing for that.
Yes. We've had top worship leaders from top churches, which names we're not going to pronounce. We're like doctors, we keep secret of people.
Yes.
And they have come here and they have broken. I says, okay, so when we see you on Sunday, you are really giving us this, you're singing, we're everything. But they resent back.
Yes.
When the door closes back, they're in pain, told, dark, bleak reality of things that they're hurting so much.
Yeah.
So when I realized where they're coming from, we said, come here, you're going to be the presenter of a thing, outgrow your pain.
Yeah.
And you still see it living in them.
Yeah.
So in that context, Pastor, there are musicians make us happy, worship leaders make us happy, we sing their music, then you go back like Michael Jackson and you die with so much pain.
Yeah.
How do we help these brothers and sisters of ours who have gone through that real part? Because that moment where Sylvain says, you can cane me for whatever you want, if it makes you happy, but you're not solving the problem. In other words, he said, what you've planted in the heart of that child is going to last forever.
Yeah.
Yes. How do we get out of it?
Yeah. The reality is we do make choices. He chose to harden because I'm not fully sure whether he was innocent.
That's very true, yeah.
I'm not fully sure that he was as innocent as his age.
Yes.
There are some things that we do wrong even at age 12.
Yeah.
And discipline is not pleasing at such a time as that. And unfortunately, with the father who probably only knew how to beat as bring you to education, could have done that. So there's error on both sides. But having been hardened in our hearts, of course, Ezekiel tells us, let God remove the hardened heart. And I think that's why it says he got born again. Something happened to him. Now, in life, unfortunately, people choose drinking or other habits, drugs, or simply ninjaing on to try and numb that. They've watched many Schwarzenegger movies, which last for 2 hours, and they try to live 20 years the way Schwarzenegger lives in 2 hours. No, there's going to be a problem. And that's why I said, don't waste your pain. Come to the place where you say, you know what, this is a real thing that hurt me. Let's see how we get rid of it, and then begin to take positive action countering that. All right? So you may not say, go back. I mean, you want to be like, if your father hurt you, he abused you, rejected you, you don't say equal and opposite. No, you simply say, okay, fine, I appreciate that. Whatever mistakes, whatever was driving you, you could have been drunk, you could have been frustrated, you spoke out of that. But I'm not going to relate with you based on the frustration. I'm going to relate with you based on what is the right thing. What is the truth? What is best? And I will forgive you. I may not be able to garner all the emotions of father and son, because sometimes that's the other deception that we have. I haven't grown up with you, I've not connected with you. I will not necessarily be as excited as the person who has not grown up with you. Calling you daddy is simply a title, like I call doctor. Okay, because I need to. But there are doctors you go to because you're friends, you've played with them and the rest. You've been with them in a gym. When you call them doctor, it's more than just...
It's not necessarily they're the best doctors who are going to treat them.
So there's something, there's a connection that exists there. So you want to, how do you rebuild this connection? Sometimes the season for that has passed. Now the issue is, what are the new positive things we can do? You're not looking for a name. You're not looking for affirmation. You're no longer looking for school fees. Okay? You're no longer looking for a father to teach you how to cross the road. The things have passed. So now you must say, okay, what is the next major thing? Are there the offended people? Are there things that we must do? How do we settle this? So settling doesn't mean that you go back, sit in his, I mean, you may not be able to go to his home every Christmas. Maybe give him a Christmas treat. do something that, and more so you do this to release your heart from that callousness, that hardness that covers pus underneath. You want the pus to come out. You want to remove the jiggers. I think Ugandans are more knowledgeable on jiggers. Remove the jigger, so the itching and the irritation is dealt with on a permanent basis. So don't live and don't excuse yourself on a maddened. I was hurt recently when I was talking to a gentleman who is considering leaving his wife and 2 sons, and one of the things is saying, you know, yeah, I don't understand her, I think we cannot make it out, and yeah, you see, this is also what happened to my father, I think I'm dealing with the same thing. And I'm saying, your father grew up without a mobile phone and all these different things. He was not as educated as you are. Why do you simply want to excuse yourself on the basis of what your father did? Let's change the narrative. Let's change the story. And again, that's why I tell people, you know, sometimes we want to change government, and we do. All things to change government. Yet our home government
is not changing.
We are the dictators, and you should be, to be thrown out. We are the dictators, all right? And we are acting so with such impunity. Because I think there's a Ugandan was working in the impunity and the rest. Guys, don't lead your family. Don't relate with your children with the impunity. You are lawless. Let's get back and say what are the natural laws? Natural law is I need to learn to say sorry. I need to be positive. I need to get back, to mend the fences, and I need to build something better. Yeah, like if you don't till your ground to sow something, the rain which came today will simply be
wasted.
Yes. Well, this is the Family Talk Show, and we have finally come to the end of this show, and I would like to say thank you very much to everyone who's joined us. But first, Sylvain, in a summary, seconds, what would be our take home from you today?
Well, my statement would be that life is going to happen. And sometimes, if not most of the times, you don't determine what happens to you. The beauty is that you have the conscience to determine how to respond. And how you respond is dependent and based on the life you want to live going forward. So if you fall in a situation like we've been talking about, finding yourself you don't have the father or the father figure in your life, or you realize that's not your father after some time, you've got to put your act together and say, what am I looking out for? Because whether you work on it or not, God is not going to change the number of hours in a day. They remain 24. And you have got 12 for the day, 12 for the night. Along the way, you can have excuses, but they still remain your excuses. Somebody else is going to hold you to account, especially your child is going to hold you to account. Unless you say, because of what I've seen growing up, I don't want to give birth to a child to hurt him or her. Maybe. But if you know that you're biologically sound, you're going to give birth to a child and he or she will not be comfortable with the excuses you produce. So make up your mind, seek God, have the purpose, and do the right. Besides, you have got an experience that you can turn around, and life in front is a lot better when you choose to work on it.
Wow. Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe?
Wow. I'm reminded, I think CNN used to boast on that if you watch it, you'll be the first one to know. And I think they used to have that phrase, be the first. I think be the first, so be the first to know. And many of us want to be first in life. And maybe you were never first in class, and you'll never be first in class. You'll never be the first lady, you'll never be the first person in the nation or anywhere. But in your life, you can be the first. In your family, you can be the first to forgive, to leave the hardened heart. You can be the first to graduate. You can be the first to be a millionaire. You can be the first. There are many first opportunities in your family that you can aspire to, but don't even just blame your father. No, be the first. Learn the principles of how do we move from A to B to C, and pursue them with all your heart, and be the first in that family. I know, was it John Speak, whatever, who was the first to see River Nile? The first human being. You can be the first.
John Speak. Well, guys, we're going to bring Family Talk Show to an end. Thank you very much for being part of the show, growing bigger and better. I just want you to do one thing for yourself. Please go and subscribe there and share this as far as possible with whoever you think needs it, starting from you. If you don't share it, then it is not going to get to where you want it to be. And you never know, you might be standing in between something that is going to get the person out of the trouble that they're in, and something that is going to deliver that person from where they are back to where they didn't want to be. So please share it far and wide, and I would like to say thank you very much, Pastor Joshua Martin Mugabe, for coming to the show today, and Mr. Sylvain. Until next week, the Family Talk Show will return on the same series of lesson learned from our fathers, and of course we've been talking about if you just wake up today and you were told this is not your father, how do you deal with the emotion? You've learned from Sylvain's story here, and we've learned from another story that was sent to us before, and we'll be coming back next week with another story that will continue this discussion. For the next 2 weeks, we'll be learning from fathers before we shift gears to the next. Of course, we're hoping to see Hassan Sekajolo back on the show with his dislocated shoulder. We hope that he will learn how to ride boda very well. And we pray and hope that Hassan, you'll get better and be back on the show. We're enjoying the story that you brought. We're enjoying the topic. And until next week, shout out to all of you guys in the diaspora and everyone who is in and around the coronavirus situation. Stay safe. The world can make money from you and your family if you are not careful. Yeah. It's a good night or good morning. All over you, the Family Talk Show, we call it a wrap.
It's a CEO bench, so usually people want to assume that all CEOs are overlearned and stuff like that. So I will change the script this time round. I consider myself a certified hustler.
If I'm looking to know who you are you Ugandan? If yes, what are the values that define you as Ugandan?